Still Particle, still Particle. Boston Celtics, still Particle, still Particle. Oh yeah! Still Particle, still Particle. Boston Celtics, still Particle, still Particle. Banner 19.
B Robb, Jim Pecker, J King.
Still Particle, still Particle.
The Caesar on the court to get another ring.
Still Particle, still Particle.
Everybody in the chat now sing.
Still Particle, still Particle. Still Particle, still Particle. The Boston Celtics, still Particle, still Particle. Oh yeah! Shut your ass up, man.
Daddy's always halfway there.
Welcome back to Still Potable, the best Celtics podcast on Al Gore's internet, and maybe the best Indiana Pacers podcast on Al Gore's internet. We shall find out. You guys, if you're tuning in for a while, you notice we had to use a different theme song because the Celtics are out of the playoffs, and we have fully transitioned into offseason mode, and what could be one of the most interesting off seasons the Celtics have had in quite some time. I am Sam Jan Packard. I'm joined by my co-host, Brian B Robb of MassLive.com, and Jay King from The Athletic. Together, we are Still Potable. Again, the best Celtics podcast coming for you every single day, Monday through Friday, on patreon.com/stillpotable. Today is the free episode, though. That means we are on the CLNS YouTube page. We are live for you right now on Twitter and YouTube as well, and we are brought to you by the fine folks at Prize Picks. And so...
Well, I got a question for you first.
Yeah, buddy.
Why are you waving a pen menacingly at us?
I don't know. It felt like a good effect. I don't know. Why am I do anything in the do? Why are you standing in the background that it feels like you're in a weird abyss right now and there's no personality, or where are you podcasting from?
I'm the personality. This is where I often podcast from.
You just don't
Same
like
place.
decor? You don't like things on the wall?
It's a hallway where I have my desk.
It's
You're dead.
representative of what the press conference was today. Is what's behind
Bland and boring?
Yes. Yeah. So it was a weird one because Brad Stevens opened it up. I've never seen him do this before at his end of season press conference. He opened it up with basically urging the writers not to ask anything about the future, which is like what is usually asked at his end of season press conference.
What are we here for?
And then when he was asked about the past, he's like, I don't want to talk about that. I'd rather talk about the future.
That Knicks series shit. I don't want to talk about that either. Who would want to talk about that?
Let's talk about torn Achilles.
And of course, we asked him about the future anyway, but he did not explain much. Said basically that he would explain more at the draft when he has another press conference, which like he's not going to explain more at the
He's only
draft.
going to talk about the 2 draft picks he makes and how he really liked them for a while. And then he's going to talk about he'll just punt it further down the road as soon as the draft comes up.
It's funny because it brought up like a huge difference between Brad and Joe. Like when Joe decides not to answer your question, you feel like he hates you. And then when Brad does it, you're like, oh, that was a nice way to like deflect that one.
I say that's Rhode Island versus of an Indiana upbringing. I think there's a stark difference in that. I watched the press conference too, and there were some nuggets of just I think it's just interesting to hear Brad talk for like half hour at any time. Of course, he didn't say anything, but did you guys really expect him to be like, oh, we gotta get under the second apron, and we're gonna do everything in our power to do so? I thought it was kind of par for the course about what I expected, Brett.
No, but he could have explained how Jason Tatum's injury changes the calculus for the front office, or at least what they're thinking about now that they weren't necessarily thinking about a week ago before he ruptured his Achilles tendon. Because that's the most interesting part. Obviously, they were going to undergo changes this summer anyway. The salary cap basically dictated that. The second apron, all of it dictated that. But with Jason's injury, that throws everything into question and could change their entire direction as a franchise And so I thought it was kind of weak not to address that and to say that he had to meet with stakeholders before he did that. And one of those stakeholders obviously is Bill Chisholm, who's coming in as a new Celtics owner. Do we really think Brad doesn't have an idea of what Bill Chisholm is going to allow them to do financially?
Of course he does. But he's not going to tell you guys that. It feels like it's like you're asking him to weaken his.
Well, then why is he having a press conference though? That's the thing, though. It's like
that's what they do at the end of the season.
No. He talked about more about this in the past, Packard. Like this was again. I get your point of like I get why he's not doing it, but this was uncharacteristic sidestepping to a degree that was extreme. I thought. I agree. I'm with Jay on this in terms of how this was handled.
I just don't know what you wanted him to say. It's like, oh, since
it would have been.
We might consider we'll entertain a Jaylen Brown or a Derek White trade. Like, what is
it? Would have been easy to say, Jason's injury could change things for us. With him expected to miss the next season, we have to weigh a number of factors. It could take us a little while to do that. He could have said, obviously, this was going to be an interesting summer for us with the cap reality anyway. And now we're just trying to kind of react to this and plan a path forward. It wouldn't have been that hard to say that.
Right.
And I guess weak is probably a strong word, but like you can't hide from the changes that are coming and what is going to happen. And I thought it was a chance to kind of explain where he was after not just the injury to Jason Tatum, but also a disaster of a series, even before he got injured, where you blow the first 2 games, you lose game 4, despite one of the best games of Jason Tatum's career. And so I thought it was a chance for him to sort of explain where they were at, but obviously he didn't want to do that.
I mean, he owned up to them completely blowing games 1 and game 2 of the Knicks series. And compared it to last year's Pacers series, like I just don't know what you guys have covered Brad Stevens for a decade now. Like, I don't know what the expectation was. He's never been like the most forthcoming of interviews.
He gets what he wants. Like he doesn't, you can read between the lines well with Brad, I think, in a lot of these. And this was one where even him sidestepping stuff to some degree would have said a lot there. But I thought even in his analysis of like the series of like, yeah, we blew the 2 games. Like, okay, but this wasn't Celtics Pacers last year. Like this was one of the, as I kind of laid out with Jay in yesterday's podcast, this was one of the 5 biggest upsets in the last 25 years in NBA playoff history by the odds. So this was a pretty high level of disaster, and just saying, oh, it was the Knicks played more, they got momentum as the series went on and they played better than us. It's like, no, like there were a lot of problems across the board here that should not have been.
What does Brad do? Brad does not get too high. Brad does not get too low. Like, it's just, do you expect him to throw players under the bus for their failures to make shots in game 1? Do you think him to expect him to criticize Joe Mazzulla? I just don't know what the, just be like fall on the sword. Like maybe he'll do that and be like, it was his fault for not putting together a good enough team, but it's the exact same team that just won a championship.
It was weak of him to try to hide from the questions in the first place. However he wanted to answer them, go ahead, answer them.
Right.
But to urge us basically not to ask those questions about the future and to focus on the past. Why? Those big decisions are coming. The reality.
I have a theory.
What's your theory?
They have no fucking idea what's going to happen this offseason because of Jason Tatum's injuries. And now they have to be open to so many other things than what I think the standard plan was, knowing that next year you have a contender with Jason and Jaylen. You're just like going to be a team contending in the finals if you have those 2 guys on the roster. Now, I feel like there's just like everything is in flux where they could have a very conservative offseason, or I don't want to see this happen, but I could see a Jaylen Brown trade or I could see a Derek White trade. And so I feel like the enormity of like the scale of what could happen this offseason makes them be like, just in panic mode of PR of just like, we're not going to say anything. Because I think the offseason, you guys know, it's totally changed. The timeline has totally changed. And I don't think a Jaylen Brown trade is going to happen, but now I think a bunch of people are going to call about Jaylen Brown, or a bunch of people are going to call about Derek White, and they're going to listen. And I feel like that changes the dynamic and the approach heading into this offseason.
Yeah, the approach should be changed. You went from thinking you were going to be maybe coming back as two-time champion to got your ass kicked by the Knicks, saw Jason Tatum have the worst injury a player could have, and now you don't know if or when he's going to be playing next season. So yeah, that changes everything. And they have a lot of difficult decisions to make coming up, and that involves the most important players on their roster. Like this is not deciding whether to rearrange the supporting cast. It's like, what do you do with your starters? What do you do with your best players outside of Jason Tatum, who may not play at all next season? Realistically, I'm just speculating. I don't know if he'll return. The timeline for injury says he has a chance to return at the very least at some point next year.
But they got the surgery done so quick, so maybe that saves him 3 months. You never know with these things.
I don't know if that's
it's a wildly unrealistic thing to say. I thought it was funny, like how much of a point of emphasis that has become of like, we got the surgery done within hours of the Achilles rupture.
It is supposed to be helpful. There's been a study done that if you do it, I believe in the first 24 hours or 48 hours, maybe, that it does help
Was it peer reviewed?
Outcomes.
Anyone can do a study.
It was, I believe, peer reviewed.
Some sort of medical journal?
The study was mentioned in an ESPN article on the subject.
Did Bontemps write it?
No, it was written, I believe, by one of their like staff medical people. So
interesting. Before we dive into what you guys think might happen and possible paths or the best path forward, I just want to talk to the fine folks out there about our friends at Prize Picks. Conference finals are here, and it's no better way to make up to 2,000 times your cash. All you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players to win that money, so you can run your game all season long with Prize Picks. You can turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series, starting with the play-in round. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you in the Takes 2 Tickets sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the ship. Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. I would just say with Jalen Brunson and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, just pick more on free throws attempted, and you'll probably win some of that money. And so
that was not financial advice.
That was not financial advice. It was prize picking advice, I guess. But
which could go very wrong, and don't trust him.
Oh, yeah. Don't trust me at all. You have way better takes than I do. But because you have better takes, I suggest you download the app today. Use promo code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Now, B Robb, like what do you think is the biggest question, the first line of business for the Celtics? Do you think it's trying to figure out what the roster looks like with Jason Tatum a year from now? Is it trying to get under the second apron for this offseason? If you're Brad Stevens, after you've given a very forthright press conference to the media, what is your next step on the offseason agenda?
You got to wait for that big stakeholder meeting, Packer. You got to wait until
screw the stakeholders
get together.
Give me your notes before the stakeholder meetings. What are you telling those stakeholders? What are you talking to Billy Banners about?
How much Billy Banners? You got $500 million for me. Yeah, I think you have to really line up. You have to take a look at what happened in these playoffs. Take a look at the East. Take a look at, I think, honestly, like 2 years down the road. And the question of being like Tatum, like realistically, Tatum, Jalen, Derek White, Pritchard, the pieces you can keep. Is that going to be good enough when you can't add much around them with having to pushed off pieces left and right for salary reasons. And that's honestly, and then I think that question just gets so much more complicated, Jay. It's like, and then you're like, well, what's Jason Tatum going to look like coming off an Achilles? And that makes all these questions just harder to answer. But first and foremost, if I feel like it's just based on how this year ended, like investing heavily into next season at all, probably feels like a non-starter just from a variety of reasons.
I thought the most interesting answer from Brad's press conference, and I'm going to read the full thing because I think you need the full thing. And he wasn't really saying anything specifically about what they're dealing with this offseason, but I think this encapsulates the conversations that they'll have and the decisions that they'll need to make. He said, I think the way that you say it is the North Star is to have a championship contender, right? And so you have to do what's best to give yourself the best opportunity to do that when you can do that. So we just have to look at it all and decide how feasible that is on any given year and make sure that we're making the decisions accordingly. But the reality is we have a lot of good players. We're in a unique situation. They're all under contract. And obviously there are several basketball penalties that come with that amount of salary. So we just have to weigh it all and make those decisions. And I'll have more clarity after we meet and talk and go through it. The important part of that to me was we just have to look at it all and decide how feasible that it is in any given year to contend and make sure that we're making the decisions accordingly. How feasible is it to contend without Jason Tatum, or with Jason Tatum compromised because he's coming out of a long rehabilitation process to get back from what has been the most damaging injury that an NBA player can face? It's not feasible. It's just not. They just lost they were going to lose in the second round with him. Never mind without him, with him damaged. And so to me, that answer right there, strip away all the nothingness that he said for the rest of the press conference. That answer right there suggests to me that they are going to have to strongly consider taking a step back, getting under the second apron to, get away from some of the penalties coming, to then focus on building a roster or tweaking the roster so that you can contend more once Tatum is back and better, which he should be that following season. So because of that, maybe you turn next year into sort of like a gap year where, of course, you want to keep the guys around that it makes sense to have once Tatum is back and healthy and will help you be championship contenders then. But you have to seriously think about, and I know Al Horford hinted that he might even consider retiring, but beyond him, it's like Drew Holiday will be 36 by the time Jason Tatum, by that season. And right now, he probably has value on the market because he's Drew Holiday. He's still a hell of a defender. He can still help you out offensively. He can still do a lot of different things. And those are the things that you might not have considered beforehand, or you might have considered less strongly beforehand, that's what it changes. And who do you want around Jason Tatum in the next iteration of this team when it's 2026, 27? And that would be how I approach it. And that doesn't mean stripping everybody off this team, because you have guys who he can win with then. And you have guys who you want to be around when you can win then. But next year, I don't think it makes sense to spend a ton of money and, keep older guys around and not go after, younger talent, try to acquire younger talent, reposition yourselves so that you can contend later and hopefully be sustainable contenders later in a way that you won't be if you keep the current roster together.
I feel like before the Tatum injury, they were still going to try and get under the second apron. There were still going to be questions about whether or not they trade Kristaps, whether or not they trade Drew. I think what you mentioned, Jay, about being a championship contender, what I feel like Brad has always mentioned, it's not just being a contender for one season, but it's sustained success. And so it's about being a contender and getting multiple bites at the apple, because you can have a really that is what I think finally got the Celtics over the edge, is that they finally they were just in the Eastern Conference Finals for 3 out of the 4 years and finally were able to break through. I think your point, right, is like, who do you want around Jason Tatum when he comes back from injury? And I think the big question there, I think it's less about KP and less about Drew. I think it's, do you think that Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum are like put you into contender status immediately with that? Or if you are going to take a step back, there's this giant big man position that they're going to have to figure out if Al Horford retires and KP's no longer on the team. And who knows if you can re-sign Luke Cornett this offseason. Are you using the two biggest trade chips you have where you can get the most amount of return? That would be White and Brown, to possibly set yourself up for Tatum's return? Or are you just trying to make smaller deals around the margins and keeping that core intact? Because I lean towards keeping Jaylen and White and Jason together, because I just think they're three very good basketball players who work well together. But if you're talking about restoring and like getting younger players and getting more talented players in there and getting younger, I don't know how you necessarily get those positive assets just from a Drew Holiday trade or a Kristaps Porzingis trade. And so I think because of that, you have to at least consider people calling you up about Derek White and Jaylen Brown and being like, well, what do we want? Like, could we get two guys? Could we get younger? Could we get a big man? And so that's where I think like is one of the bigger questions of the offseason is like, are you going to consider, B Robb, like maybe dealing one of these core pieces so you're better aligned for the start of the 2026, 2027 season?
Yeah, you have to see if someone's going to bowl you over on that front. I think Brad Stevens' MO, to your point back, would be to lean the more conservative track of that group, because they do have, like, that's proven, and those guys are in their prime right now.
Can I disagree with that for a second?
Yeah, of course.
When he thinks his team needs a change, he's not conservative. He's aggressive. He went and moved Kemba Walker like a week after he got the job and went and got Al Horford.
That's fair. Kemba was done.
He moved Marcus Smart, who's a beloved Celtic, and went and got Kristaps Porzingis. People had been pushing
for that that had been in the works for years. Like the market, like that wasn't a out of nowhere move. Like that was a move they were considering, I feel like, a year or two even before that. But you're right. Like he has gone out and done stuff, but
the only time he didn't do that was after they won a title.
Yeah.
And now he's seen that they fell short, and now Tatum has an injury. I think he's going to be decisive.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it'll be more of like they're going to consider. I think the bar to move Jaylen and Derek White is going to be very high, and it's possible a team could reach that. There are teams out there that have, the need to add. Obviously, I mean, anyone would want Derek White. Only a handful of teams I feel like could really use a Jaylen Brown given his salary, Christine, but they're out there. But the Celtics, like to move on from those guys in their prime, you're going to need to be bowled over, in my mind, if you're Brad Stevens. And so that's what. But I agree with you, Zach. Your point stands, Jay, from the standpoint of like, yeah, if that move is there, Brad will be aggressive with it, and because it is like, I don't know if is building around two supermax players realistic 2 years from now, like when you don't have much left in the cupboard. And Payton Pritchard's eventually going to get paid. Derek White's good value contract is not going to be there forever. Like the time will potentially run out there quickly, even with that core group. And so taking a bigger step back now and replenishing the cabinet for the future, like contending 2.0, that is going to be certainly in play.
And those are hard conversations.
Right.
And I do think a lot of it will be not just with the Jaylen Brown and Derek White conversations, but with Kristaps, with Drew. What will another team like? It's possible that the market for Kristaps just isn't there. That the market for Drew Holiday just isn't really strong. And do you trade those guys for, pennies on the dollar when there are probably teams willing to overspend for Derek White because he's great, he's in his prime, he can fit anywhere,
And he doesn't make $60 million like Jalen will. Like he is, I think, for bang for your buck in terms of contract wise. I think White's a more valuable asset right now than Jaylen Brown is.
But if you believe that, like it's possible that Celtics believe that. It's also possible that another team doesn't believe that, and they think Jalen is worth more than Derek White, and then maybe they'll blow you away for Jaylen Brown. And so, I do think these are going to be complicated discussions. I think they're going to have to weigh a lot. I think they're going to have to explore the trade market for all these guys. And I don't know what the number they'll need to reach financially, or get under financially. But it's entirely possible that Bill Chisholm has changed his financial outlook. His outlook on the finances. Lost that, and then next year you go from being one of the favorites to now being just a pretty good team.
Do you think, and I guess maybe this is something we would hope Brad would have said today, but how much of a do you think they're gonna definitely get under the second apron this offseason?
Yeah, 110%. That's not even the question. Is how far under?
Hauser is gone, I feel like, in that, and then you have to get rid of one of Kristaps or Drew, and to do so, you still have to take back money. I think the Nets are the only team that can fully take Kristaps' money into cap space, and so do you attach a pick to try and to get off of Kristaps Porzingis' contract? And then it's sequencing comes into a big thing, because if you get under the apron with one of these deals, then you can aggregate and do more flexibility. And so is the first line of being we need to figure out a Kristaps trade partner. Does anyone want to trade for Kristaps until they figure out he doesn't have the plague?
That was probably one of the only interesting things Brad said, was that he basically said he thinks Kristaps is going to be fine in a couple of weeks. Called it post-viral syndrome, what Kristaps has been dealing with. And
is that just long COVID?
Long virus. It was termed a non-COVID illness from the start. So they were lying to us if it is COVID.
They would never do that.
But I think that was probably should be calming for Celtics fans to hear, because the way Kristaps described it made it sound like doctors don't know what it is, or they're not totally sure. And Brad was just kind of like, yeah, we think that with a couple of weeks of rest he'll be okay, and that by the time he plays in Eurobasket, which is late August, that he said it would be, I believe, well cleared up by then. So all that stuff is very promising on Kristaps, but you still have to deal with the rest of his injury history, and other teams will have to weigh that before considering how to value him. When he played and was right, he was great for the Celtics. So it's not a question of the peak and how he can impact you at the top. It's just how dependable can he be, and not just next year, but like I said, 2 years from now, when you expect Tatum to be back and more like himself.
Yeah, I mean, Porzingis, his situation will be fascinating, for the long term. Part of me thinks he's a definite goner from just his unreliability in the playoffs over not just here, just over the course of his career. But at the same time, if it's if he has no value right now and next year's a wash anyway, maybe you can resign him at a reasonable number a year from now when his contract expires. If you don't get him off the books, then you move other pieces anyway. That's a fascinating question. But my gut says he's certainly the most movable piece right now. It's just, like you said, it's a matter of is the pain of attaching something to him to move him worth it? Or do you take back just a couple of smaller deals and then have to make other deals to come like you said, Packer? The sequencing here is going to be big. It's going to be complicated. When stuff starts happening, don't expect one or two. It's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to be a lot of stuff going on. Probably not all at once either. As they try to kind of unlayer this from a financial standpoint while also trying to achieve what they want to achieve.
We're gonna have busy
building up for the
summers.
future. It's gonna be a very busy summer.
We're gonna be. We're not gonna be able to have one like totally relaxed moment. We'll just be thinking, when's the next trade coming?
Yeah.
Like back to the days when Danny was wheeling and dealing.
At
Kyrie
least
in the middle of
threatening to
August.
wheel and deal. Yeah.
Question for you guys for this. Like looking at Drew now, I look at like the situation with Drew. They gave him this deal. They signed him to this long extension. It helped them for the now. Like he turned down a $37 million option. So he started at $30 million this year. That helped keep this team together for this year as it was. And now, the bill has come due with it. I worry that the market is not going to be there for him. And that will lead to other tough decisions for the Celtics.
He's Drew Holiday, I would say to that. And other franchises will sell themselves on Drew Holiday. I know his contract isn't great at this stage. I know he's not coming off his best season. He was still impactful in the playoffs. He still played great defense in the playoffs. And at the end of the day, if you think you're a piece or two away and you can upgrade to Drew Holiday, I think that's a move a lot of teams will make.
But I feel like it's so much harder in this new CBA where it's like past his prime Drew Holiday for $30+ million a year. If you're already a contender, you probably have one max contract on your books and another max contract. Like, are you able to take on a third or maybe fourth star and pay him that much money? And I think, are you willing to do that? I think if Drew Holiday was a 1-year contract, I think there's teams that are much more willing to talk them in for like, he's the one guy who put us over the edge. But 3 more years of Drew Holiday, especially where he gave you not a lot of production in the regular season. I know he's a 16 game player, but frankly, I guess we have no idea at this point what his market is, but I wouldn't be surprised if they needed to attach more.
I think you're mistaken on this one. I think he is a plus asset.
For 3 years, though? Like, who wants to pay Drew Holiday 2 years from now, $35 million?
I think Drew Holiday is a plus asset. After conversations with people, I think he's a plus asset.
After conversations.
You gotta get Steve Ballmer on the phone.
Now,
I think that's the that'd be my first call.
But
Brad.
Steve Ballmer's a guy who wasn't willing to give Paul George a 4th year. Like it feels like
but he was making $55 million.
The Clippers, I feel like, went out of their way to avoid kind of like long money on the books. I don't know if they're in the second. I would imagine they're in the second apron. I don't know all the teams in the second apron right now, but I feel like
they did a bit of a reset last year, so they're under the first apron, so they have a little bit of.
They're back to flexibility land, baby.
They're back.
So do they want to ruin that for Drew Holiday?
We'll see exactly. Like what are their options? Do they have any other better alternatives? Like those are the sort of. I think those are the type of suitors, to Jay's point, that will be.
What about the Mavericks?
Yeah, it's the win.
Kyrie Irving is out for a little while, but they want to win now. They're going to be bringing in Cooper Flagg. They could use another guard, not just to handle the ball some while Kyrie's out, but also to play next to him once he's back.
Yep,
that would be pretty cool if I were the Mavericks.
But what would the Celtics get back for that?
Luka.
They don't have any. Like you could get Daniel Gafford
sound to you?
Daniel Gafford is kind of out of minutes there. Gafford for Holiday is like interesting. I don't know the
Caleb Martin.
Oh God,
really reliable.
He would be. I just know Caleb Martin would shoot 22% from 3 as soon as he became a member of the Celtics. Like that's just it's not going to work out. I think like where do they get a big man from? I think so when Jason Tatum comes back, even if they still have Jason or Jaylen Brown and Derek White, I just feel like there is this gaping hole at people who are above 6'10" or 7 feet. And it feels pretty important in kind of modern basketball to have a competent big man, especially it feels like the one who can shoot threes. Although maybe the Timberwolves and the
Daniel Tice. Daniel Tice will be
I'm
in there.
always for Daniel Tice coming back, but I just think it's like, where are they generating the rest of the core for like Celtics like the 2.0 of the Tatum Celtics? I guess would this be 3.0 of the Tatum? Like, I don't know. Now that's just semantics. But where are they getting a kind of
Maybe
a
4.0.
Yeah, it could be a fourth.
There's been a lot of iterations of the Celtics.
Yeah, with Kemba would be 2.0, and then maybe the Drew person 3.0. To your point, it is. It's like the big man question is out there. I imagine bringing back Luke Cornett, not that he's the answer to the question, is going to be a priority no matter what path they take.
But do they need to like know for a fact they're getting off some of these?
Yes.
The KP deal or the Drew deal. And then that makes the timing that much more interesting, because free agency starts July 1st, and the Lakers.
But you can wait to sign officially, though. You can wait, like you could say, Luke, we got this. We got to do some other stuff first.
I don't think Luke would accept a conditional offer if he knew one of his friends were going to be traded. I think Luke's too loyal to the team. But yeah, that's a good point. But like, so you make an agreement with Luke, it comes out we're re-signing Luke, but like, with everyone knowing that they're gonna trade Drew Holiday or Kristaps Porzingis. That's why I think the sequencing of everything matters a lot, because I feel like the Luke Cornett's a perfect Los Angeles Laker. Like it's a rim running big who would work well in that team. There are going to be other teams that want Luke Cornett, especially after game 5 is 7 blocks. Like, I just think they're like, all of this is going to happen rather quickly in the month of June. And so they're going to, once they have that stakeholder meeting, I hope it's tomorrow. I hope that they have because there's a lot of stuff they got to figure out in the next 6 weeks.
Important stakeholder meeting coming up. Super important stakeholder meeting coming up.
Do you think Pags is there? Do you think he's an important stakeholder at this point? Who? Let's figure this out. Who do you think's at the stakeholder meeting? We got Joe, Brad, Zarin, Billy Banners. I'm sure Austin Ainge is there. What are the other stakeholders? The private equity group that's financed 20% of the sale. Wick's still on board for some reason. He's got to be at the stakeholder meeting. Who runs this meeting? Who's the facilitator? Is this Brad's meeting to run? Take me on the inside, guys.
I mean, I don't think Jay and I will ever be invited to this meeting, but I imagine Brad would potentially outline a few paths, if you will. Okay, guys, if we can spend X, this is what we can do. If we can spend Y, this is what we can do, and reset the tax and all this other stuff. And these are our paths. What's realistic? What makes the most sense for us?
Do you think there's any sense of like a mandate of like, you have to get under this number, or it's like, go out there and listen to all possible options and then let's figure out the best path forward based on those options? Like, I don't know if there's any way of knowing.
It could probably be, I mean, it's a new owner, so who knows? But I think it could be a sliding scale depending on what you can do. Right. A new owner could be willing to pay a little bit more if something exciting comes along. But I do think there should be at least a ballpark of what they need to do, where they need to get to financially. And that has to do with Brad, that has to do with Bill Chisholm, that has to do with all these guys being on the same page and, giving Brad a little guidance so that he knows what he can spend and what he needs to do to shed salary this summer. And I don't think it'll be like straight salary dumps. I really don't. They have enough value contracts on their roster that salary dumping would probably be the wrong way to go here. I think they're going to retool, try to get younger, and try to build a new iteration of the Celtics that can thrive once Tatum is back and ready. And obviously you don't know how he'll come back from this. it's a as optimistic as it is, or as Brad Stevens sounded about the fact that Tatum was able to get in for that injury or in for that surgery as quickly as he was. There's no promise that he'll come back the same player, and that's just the reality, and that's something they have to consider too as they rebuild things. But to me, I would still want to build around him. I would just want to push the timeline out a little bit now.
I don't think he's going to be physically at the meeting, but metaphorically, is Jason Tatum a stakeholder? Like, how much input and how much decision do you think he gets in, like, I want to play with Derek White and Jaylen Brown, like there's no way you're trading them? Or do you think he's just not factored into that decision at all? Because I feel like this is always something that's up for debate.
Do you just have Drew Holiday call Giannis and be like, Giannis, we need you, bud?
I was thinking Giannis earlier.
You need to demand a trade to Boston, my dude, and then figure out how to make that happen. They are tight. They are tight.
Not tight enough for Giannis to not to be like kick Drew out of the way just to get Dame. But back to my, like, I feel like this always happens.
Now he knows that Drew is crucial.
Yeah, now he knows that defense is important. This always happens with like LeBron teams. There's like, how much does LeBron know? How much does he approve? I get the sense that like it feels like if you're building around your one central star, you would want some like input from that. And like, I think this happened this year with the Michael Malone firing. Is like, how much did Jokic push for that, or did Jokic just like say that's okay? I also kind of get the sense that Jason Tatum is like doesn't want to be involved. Is just like, I play basketball, you guys deal with that, and I'm going to just play with whoever you guys put me with, and I trust you guys. But I don't know. I haven't gotten the sense in Jason Tatum's time in Boston that he's like very much a person to like try and dictate terms. But it's a superstar league in the NBA, and I feel like he has some sort of sway. Maybe he can give his opinion. Maybe he's not making the final decision necessarily, but I'm just kind of curious, like what your sense of that relationship is like between Tatum and just like roster moves.
I mean, there was talk that he, recruited Damian Lillard a little bit and was working toward that. So I do think he's thinking about this stuff. He's giving advice, but at the end of the day, the Celtics, I think Brad does what he thinks is best for the organization. Another one, Emile Jefferson, one of his best friends, is on the coaching staff. So he definitely has some influence in the organization. It's not just like Jason's totally, oblivious to what's going on, and they're calling all the shots themselves. I do think there's some discussion there, but at the end of the day, it's Brad calling the shots, and I think Jason has a lot of trust in Brad, and he should have a lot of trust in Brad. The moves that Brad has made to position the Celtics for the 2 championship chances they've had the last 2 seasons. They blew this one, but obviously, constructing that roster, Brad he has done an amazing job so far.
Yeah, historically, when Tatum has been asked about that sort of thing, Packard, he has said he doesn't want it. But like Jay said, at this point, when you get to this level in his organization, like you don't do something like a big reset. You certainly running that by him to get him on board. And I don't know, like I would feel very safe if I was like Derek White, if Jason Tatum is involved at all in terms of the decision making, from just given how close those guys are. On and off the floor, it seems like. But yeah, he's still under contract through 2029. So if you're ever gonna I think you keep him in the loop, but ultimately, like, Brad's got to do here what makes the most sense. And players making moves as GMs has not worked well around the league lately. If you look on Milwaukee or plenty of other spots, and so. Yeah, you run it by him and you hope he gets on board.
All right, the final thing I want to talk about,
that music. I want to talk about that music first. Is that the bedtime music, B Robb?
Ice cream truck is Mr. Softy is directly outside my apartment.
Hey, Zach's gonna wake up from bed right now to go look for ice cream if Pecker's apartment.
8:51, and when we're recording is an odd time for ice cream, and it's not even really warm in Philadelphia. That's an ominous sign. I feel like that's the start of a horror movie.
That is a weird one. That's a real weird one.
That makes me feel not safe.
You good, bro?
It just really threw me for a loop. All I was trying to do is talk about Fred VanVleet, but like now I'm just. What do you guys think about this crazy Fred VanVleet idea? Because he has a team option that you can trade for him and then not pick up his option, and it's a way to.
I'm going to stop right there.
Can't do it.
Can't do it because once he gets traded, that contract becomes guaranteed.
Oh well, that's possible.
The NBA kind of changed that loophole. I think maybe a few years ago. I think actually because the Celtics had structured some contracts well with it, with like Jerebko and Amir Johnson back in those days. And the good old days of the extreme Danny Whelan and Dillon. So yeah, then any type of trade for a non-guaranteed guy, that doesn't really, you can't pull that off anymore.
So there's no immediate sources of any sort of cap relief. That's the thing that I feel like is the hardest about getting under the second apron is that there's not a lot of teams with cap space. You can't aggregate contracts, so you're going to have to take money back that, at least to keep them in the trading team,
or send it to a third team.
Right. You can trim some money, Packard. So like,
but
Celtics send out 30.
Like Hauser's gone. Like we've seen Hauser play his last game in a Boston Celtics uniform. There's just no way
I would not make such a declarative statement about anything going on with the Celtics this summer. Because I think a lot could happen. A lot could happen, and there could be any number of types of trades, any number of players involved in trades. And to sit here on May 19th and say Sam Hauser is absolutely gone, I think is poppycock. He could be gone. He could be gone.
You're right. Like Jay's right for the like Hauser.
He's the most likely to leave, though. I feel like from the scale of Jaylen Brown to Sam Hauser is like
he's not the most likely to leave. He's the it's the path of least resistance to move for the Celtics because his contract is as such where it's $10 million. That's easy. A team can just take that into their mid-level because that's now a TP for all these teams. So it's easy for the Celtics to move that and just get that off the books. Does that make sense for the Celtics, to Jay's point? Do they have other options in play where you have Sam Hauser in control for 4 more years at $10 million a year? Like that's going to age perfectly fine. And certainly is not going to be a make or break situation for the second apron of the tax when you have big contracts like Drew or KP involved, or if you go do something wild with Jalen or Derek White. So yeah, Jay's right. Like everything is on table, but speaking in absolutes right now for any of these guys is dangerous since there is so much on the table.
Sam Hauser is definitely going to be traded. That's what I'm saying right now. 519, Mr. Softy's outside. You guys can write it down. But what it sounds like you guys are saying is that it's going to be a fascinating 6 weeks for rumors, scuttlebutt, transactions with regards to these Boston Celtics. If you want a place where you can talk and hear about the Boston Celtics and their transactions every single day, Monday through Friday, I highly recommend you go to patreon.com/stillpotable. We are here for you every single day, Monday through Friday. We got 2 of the best reporters on the beat, Jay King and Brian B Robb, giving you their thoughts and analysis and reporting on what's going on with the Boston Celtics. So definitely sign up today. Join the Patreon chat where you can react yourself and be there with a bunch of other Celtics fans. We really appreciate everyone who's tuned in, everyone who's subscribed to the show. It was a very fun 24-25 season, and it's going to be even more fun off season. So definitely recommend you go to patreon.com/stillpotable. Appreciate everyone tuning in on the CLNS YouTube page and the sponsor Prize Picks for helping us out today. We'll be back tomorrow to break down whatever new rumors, new scuttlebutt, whatever happens with these Boston Celtics. Maybe there'll be another Brad Stevens press conference that you guys can shit on. Who knows?
Stakeholder meeting tomorrow, maybe.
What's happening
Stakeholder
tomorrow?
meeting.
Stakeholder,
We're invading the stakeholder.
Are
meeting.
you guys camping out outside the Auerbach Center to see what stakeholders are going in and what stakeholders are coming out?
I don't think that would be at the Auerbach Center.
Oh, you think it's like at a fancy downtown hotel?
I don't know where that would be.
Why would they give up? Why would they have to rent additional office space? Why else? Why would they not have the meeting at the team facility?
Maybe they would have it at the Auerbach Center. I don't know. They have other offices near TD Garden.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you two veteran reporters have some sources to call, and you got to figure out where that stakeholder meeting is. We got to have a guy on the inside.
Stakeholder meeting. We got to bug it.
Oh, wow. If we do some like Ocean's 11 type stuff to get one of us on the inside dressed up as a waiter, do you think? Okay, obviously they know who you guys are, but
what could you do, Packard? You're a lawyer. Like, how could we work you into this meeting?
Well, it's a two-party consent state, so it's you can't.
We got to
really
send Sean Gauthier.
Yeah,
that's the play.
Also, there's like a weird legal loopholes with what you're allowed to do with drones. So if we could somehow figure out where the meeting is and operate the drone that picks up audio.
Why do you know about all these drone legal loopholes?
Because when I was working in the state legislative judiciary committee, I had to research drone law and the Fourth Amendment. And so I know it's a sticky situation, but it's not exactly clear what's going on there and what the penalties are for drone surveillance. So if anyone out there in the Still Pot Up community is a drone guy or an audio expert, we're not audio experts. Please let us know.
We would never send a drone into the stakeholder meeting.
We might send it outside and have a directional camera, a directional microphone. And if anyone's got a tip for the where the stakeholder meeting's happening, please let us know.
The first question for Brad at the drafts has to be what happened in the stakeholder meeting.
Who was there?
Please give us a blow-by-blow recap of the stakeholder meeting.
I mean, I expect we're going to talk about the stakeholder meeting the rest of the week, so I'm excited to dive in. Any information, patreon.com/stillpotable. Please tell us about the stakeholder meeting. We appreciate everyone for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with even more analysis, thoughts about the Celtics offseason. We'll also talk about the remaining games in the NBA playoffs because it's going to be two pretty interesting conference finals. Go Pacers, go. I hate the Knicks. We'll end on this. Did you see what those heathens, those thugs, those the miscreants did to our man Brian Windhorst outside MSG?
Terrible.
Throwing things at him.
Windy is a saint.
He's a saint. How dare they?
That should have turned ugly. Like
he should have thrown fists, but Windy would never do that. Where's Batman?
What would I have done if they had come after me like that? I don't think I would have been
in a
as
situation
as
like
Windy.
that.
I would have been worried about you, Jake. Those crowds were crazy, and you.
No, you don't have to worry for me. Worry for the crowd.
Jay, if you do end up arrested, don't say anything, okay? Just say lawyer, and then I'll be there.
Are you calling Packer? Who's your first call, Jay?
Your dad, obviously.
First of all, there would be nobody in good enough shape to speak to the cops after a fight with me.
It doesn't matter. They have it on video camera and they've arrested you. Let's talk real brass tacks here, Jay. You've been arrested. You're in.
Wasn't me.
That's a good start. Say nothing.
Wasn't me.
He's got you on camera. All right.
Misleading video.
It's going to be a tough trial for your boy. But we'll figure it out. That's going to do it for us, folks. Very much appreciate you guys tuning in. Be back tomorrow. See ya.
Still Bottle, Still Bottle, Boston, Still Bottle, Still Bottle. Oh, yeah.
Go down from eating and drinking and all that wild stuff.